Hello and welcome, everyone. Thank you very much for tuning in. This is a screencast-o-matic presentation and recording that has us looking at the part of the lesson on Islam. In particular, we're going to be looking at the rise of Islam. Before we get started, please let me encourage you to open up to today's lesson and to scroll down to the correct section. Now remember, your task is to fill in any content that happens to appear in the guided notes section and or answer any key concept questions that happen to appear as well. Let's go ahead and get started. And remember, you can replay any part of this presentation for detail or clarity later on. Let's begin. So in terms of location, when we say the Middle East, this has different meanings and connotations to different people. The Arabian Peninsula, or Southwest Asia, aka the Middle East, is in fact our region of focus for today and this unit. Now, the Middle East essentially serves as a bridge between Africa, Asia, and Europe, allowing goods and ideas to be shared. The Middle East is essentially the hub of cultural diffusion, not just throughout world history, but also in today's times too. In addition, the Middle East has a unique set of geographic traits and characteristics. Although it's mostly desert and most people are nomadic, the fact is that there is a rich history and culture in this region. The Bedouin people were organized into clans and tribes and groups that provided security and support for each other in the harsh, unforgiving conditions. In fact, these types of people were able to survive and thrive against all odds, and in many ways were able to establish deep cultural roots in the Middle East. Here's a depiction of what the Bedouin people might have looked like. Additionally, in regards to the Arabian Peninsula, by the early 600s, many Arabs settled in an oasis or market town, thus setting down permanent cultural roots. The permanent trade routes developed between the Byzantine and the Persian empires and along the Silk Roads too. These types of trade routes were important because people traded spices, incense, silk, and other products. These products would be really important not just for the Middle Eastern world and the Arab world, but also for other parts of the world as well. Camels were even used to transport goods because they could travel across vast deserts and geographic landscapes quite well, once again requiring little water along the way. If you look carefully at this map, you can see the elaborate system of trade routes that was established around 570. Much of the world is becoming more interconnected, and in many ways, more connection means more cultural diffusion. In regards to the Arabian Peninsula, the city of Mecca was along the trade routes too, which would become a really important city for the people of Islam later on. Traders initially would stop at the Kaaba, adding idols to be worshipped along with many gods and spirits. This was really important to them, and the city of Mecca became to be really important for the culture of people in the Middle East too. Also, in the Arabian Peninsula, monotheism too did exist, and Arabic Christians and Jews worshipped one God. You would find a whole melting pot of different people of different religions. God, or Allah in Arabic, or Elohim in Hebrew, or El Aramaic, were really important to the people of this particular region. Now, even though everyone calls God by a different name, there are many stark similarities between different religions and their approach and their belief of what is God. Here's a quick snapshot of Mecca today, actually, to prove the point of just how important this city is. Now let's take a moment to talk about Muhammad, who is really important, and in fact you might have heard of him before. Muhammad was born in Mecca around 570, and little is known about his early life. However, even though he received no formal education, he would prove to be really important in Islam and the story of it. He worked as a trader for a wealthy widow caravan owner named Khadijah. And later on, Muhammad, at age 25, married Khadijah. What's interesting about Muhammad, though, is the fact that Muhammad became distressed with the idol worship of Arabs, so he began to fast and meditate about the fate of his own people. Over time, what happened is that at about age 40, Muhammad heard the voice of an angel Gabriel telling him that there was only one Lord, Allah. This divine inspiration or message motivated Muhammad to go tell other people about what he saw and what he heard. Muhammad believed that he was the last and the greatest in a series of prophets, starting first with Abraham and including Moses and Jesus along the way. Let's talk about Abrahamic religions. Muhammad is a descendant of Abraham, and his beliefs are based on Abraham's prophecy. So what that means is that Muhammad's divine teachings and inspirations would be later passed down throughout generations, with different people spreading the word of Muhammad. Judaism, Christianity, and Islam are all Abrahamic faiths, and their God is in fact the one God. And I think in many ways that helps us to bridge together these different religions, because sometimes we often think that there's more differences than there are common characteristics. In regards to Muhammad and his story, in Jerusalem, the oldest standing Islamic monument would later be built as a testament to Muhammad's divine inspiration. But this spot where Abraham prepared to sacrifice his son Isaac to God, and Muhammad ascended to heaven to learn Allah's will, this is the reason why this particular place is really important. Additionally, in regards to Muhammad, his divine message would help influence other people too. Muhammad worked hard to begin to spread Islam in 613, and he was often greeted with great hostility around the Muslim and Arab world, and he was rejected in Mecca too. Many thought it would hurt Mecca as a trading center and pilgrimage center if they were converted to a predominant Islamic place. However, Muhammad left Mecca in 622 and began the Hijra, or flight, to Yathrib, where he was named Medina. Medina is also a really important city to most practicing Muslims today as well. Muhammad spreads Islam. In Medina, Muhammad joined Arabs, Muslims, and Jews together into one community, or Ummah, and served them as a political, religious, and military leader. This might often get Islam a bad name in terms of its militaristic roots, because people look at that word Ummah and they think that it's a militaristic, authoritarian type of take on religion. But quite the opposite is true. In 630, Muhammad led 10,000 followers to return to Mecca, and many Meccans converted to Islam and joined the Ummah. And in many ways, this is how mass conversion started. As you guys are aware, in religion, conversion is really important as a tool to help spread your message and your religion systematically across distant lands to different people. Muhammad was able to spread Islam, though, with great persistence. Although he died 2 years later at 632 at age 62, which by the way was relatively old for the time, Muhammad, after his death, his revelations and teachings were written in Arabic and collected in a work called the Quran. Now you might have heard about the Quran before. In many ways, it does share some comparable similarities to the Bible in terms of its execution and structure, but there are different things in the Quran that do differentiate it from the Bible. Over time, the spread of Islam began to take place, especially in the years of 632 to 750, and the Quran would prove to be a driving force of that. The Quran is the holy book of the Muslims and seen as the sequel to the Torah and the Gospels. The Quran is really important to practicing Muslims. Arabic is the language of the Quran, and only Arabic is the true word of Allah. That's why there's a lot of pressure for Muslims today to learn Arabic, and that's why they take a lot of great pride in their language. The Quran would be later used to unite and control later conquered people, sometimes through war and conquest, sometimes through persuasion and religious enlightenment. Now, something interesting about the Quran here is that it is a key part of the Muslim way of life. But did you know that there are other key vital practices that prove to be just as important to practicing Muslims today? In fact, some of these principles are really important. You may not drink alcohol or eat pork, and no priests or central religious authorities are found in the religious domain of Islam. And additionally, people worship Allah directly. So unlike other faiths and religions where there might be a middleman, so to speak, between you and the masses and of course God, in many ways this is more of a direct religion. In terms of the Muslim way of life, the ulama or scholar class or religious teachers are the ones who apply Muhammad's teachings to everyday life. And these people are in fact respected throughout many traditional Islamic or Muslim communities. And of course, these people must follow the 5 pillars, and it's encouraged that all good practicing Muslims follow the 5 pillars of Islam as well. Let me explain what the 5 pillars of Islam actually are. A declaration of faith, daily prayer. In fact, most practicing Muslims do try to pray 5 times a day. Alms to the poor, which is another word that just means charity or giving to the poor. Fasting during Ramadan, which is also really important, which means abstaining from food intake during the hours when the sun is up, and going on a Hajj, which is a pilgrimage to Mecca. And you're going to learn more about this in the Vice News documentary on a pilgrimage to Mecca. By the way, this is a quick snapshot of what Mecca looks like, and in many ways this is a beautiful ceremony and beautiful trip for many practicing devout Muslims. So in a nutshell, guys, that is what Islam is. And so my hope is that we were able to understand a little bit more about this unique religion and understand more about how it takes a historic and also deep cultural role in our world today. Thank you very much for tuning in, and good luck with completing the rest of the lesson.